What all these lines have in common is that many of the people have never asked for food before.
What would you do without them, you think?
Well, probably go start growing my own food in the backyard, probably.
We are relying, I think, too much right now on the charity food system.
Diane Schazenbach is the director for the Institute for Policy Research at Northwestern University. She found that in the first few months of the pandemic, the number of Americans who didn't have enough to eat surged from around 8 million to nearly 30 million.
This has revealed some big holes in our safety net, but they're holes that Congress can fix.
Everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about food insecurity. Now, this is a term that has been coined with a very high level of frequency as of recently, and it's being spewed all over mass media, all over preparedness media. I mean, people are really running with this food insecurity narrative. And I'm just going to be very upfront and honest with you. It is a very dangerous narrative to be pushing because most people don't understand what it is. And so I have seen enough of this narrative being, pushed that it's become dangerous. Absolutely, it's become dangerous. And I feel like I have an obligation to do this video on it. Now, I understand that this video is never going to be one that trends, is never going to be one that's going to be really put out there in the limelight, and that's fine. I just need to be able, for my own conscience, know that I put this out there, and it's out there because no matter what, YouTube wants to do with it, or this, company wants to do with it, or this website, it's going to be out there. It'll be on Rumble. It'll be out there. And so I feel like it's important to at least have this out there because instead of trying to hash out these ideas by typing, this is not something that is able to be explained with a few words on Twitter or Parler, or this is something that needs to be expounded on. I want to have the facts here for you. I really want you to understand where it is that this agenda is coming from. And so I feel obligated to make this video, put it out there so I can at least send people there so they can look at it, look at all the research, do their own research, and come to their own conclusions. But I'm telling you, based on everything that I'm seeing, this food insecurity narrative is absolutely dangerous and is going to be used to unravel everything that people in preparedness have worked so hard to do. Not even joking, that's how dangerous this is. And you guys know me, I don't do conspiracies. I don't do conspiracies, I do facts. And the facts are, as I'm going to show them to you, this is a dangerous narrative. So let's get started. So in order to really talk about what food insecurity is, we have to define it, right? And food security is defined in many different ways, but the most important definition that we need to look at is what the USDA's definition of food insecurity is, because that is going to be the basis for all other nonprofit hunger relief programs and nonprofits. Everybody takes their data off of the USDA, and the basis of what makes up the USDA's definition, as we're going to see unfold, is going to be very important, and it goes to demonstrate the dangerousness of this narrative, okay? So when we're talking about food insecurity, we have to look at the different levels, okay? And when it comes to food insecurity, we're going to look at the last two levels, which really define low food security. So, low food security. Reports, right? Reports of reduced quality, variety, or desirability of diet, which includes culturally appropriate food. Little or no indication of reduced food intake in the low food security measure, right? So there's four. You have very high food security, medium, high food security. You have low food security, which what I just said, and then you have very low food security. Very low food security is reports of multiple indications of the aforementioned of disrupted eating patterns and reduced food intake. So the difference between low food security and very low food security, one is based upon reports of reduced quality, variety, and desirability to include culturally appropriate food, but doesn't show very little or no indication that there's a reduction in food intake while very low food security is basically you take the aforementioned is happening, and there is a pattern of reduced food intake. And so with that, the USDA has established that in 2018, an estimated 1 out of 9 Americans were food insecure, equating to over 37 million Americans, including more than 11 million children. So the next question we have to ask ourselves is, where does the USDA get these numbers? It's a really good point. So the USDA sent a survey out to 40,000 different households, and they answered a 10-question survey. So a 10-question survey used by the USDA to assess household food security. And the answers, as according to their website, and the actual survey that was conducted, which I'll give you a link to, and then the actual survey of that survey where they got these numbers, I'll also leave you a link in that description box below, were solely based on self-reporting experiences. Okay, so they took 40,000, they took a survey, they sent it to 40,000 households, 10-question survey, and the answers are solely based on self-reporting experiences. So there is no accountability, there is no verification, and when you look at what the actual questions are, there is no definable, right? There is no definable metric, right? So one of the questions that is on there simply asks you, have you felt food insecure, right? So have you felt that there has been a reduction of quality, variety, or desirability of your diet within the last year? Well, if the answer is yes, you're food insecure. That is an example of food insecurity. It only has to happen once. That is a food insecure answer. I can tell you that if you buy your food at the grocery store, yes, you are going to experience a lower quality and variety of food. And that also is going to directly correlate to the desirability of that food. Because when I go to the grocery store and I see the garbage meat that they have, yeah, that makes that food very undesirable compared to what I am blessed to be able to eat here on the homestead, right? So it's very easy to take these generality terms that have no real metrics, that can't be observed in real time, can't be measured in real time, and are not even empirical, right? They're not empirical at all, because when you're talking about the definition, there's nothing to equate anything that's empirical. The desirability of the food, how you like it, and how you can state that by not liking it, you're somehow food insecure, goes to blow in the face directly to reality. I get it. Kids don't like to eat spinach, therefore they're food insecure by this definition. Okay? And so let's go down, because this is going to really caveat into, the rest of what we're going to be doing a deep dive in here. According to the survey, the prevalence of food insecurity disproportionately affects people of color and low-income families. That's what the study says. And then, when we're talking about food insecurity, when you're talking about having a low food security threshold, we have to talk about food access, right? As defined by the USDA, food access is the ability to obtain and maintain levels of sufficient amounts of health, safety, affordable food for all family members in a variety of settings, to include where they live, where they learn, where they work, where they play. Food access is often measured by distance to a store or the number of stores in that area, individual level of resources such as a family's income or vehicle availability, and neighborhood level indicators of resources such as the average income of the neighborhood and availability of public transportation. That is so general and that is so broad. So let's talk about, that is what they're saying, right? They are stating that 1 out of every 9 Americans is food insecure. Food insecurity is 100% linked to self-reporting of reduced quality, variety, desirability, where there's either little to no indication, or in some cases, and 4.5% indications of disrupted eating patterns and reduced food intake. And this all needs to be under the understanding of food access, which means anywhere that you live, learn, work, and play, should have not only access to food, and what they mean by access is within 1 mile, you should be able to have access to food where you live, work, learn, and play. And if you don't have transportation to get there, if it is within 1 mile, is there public transportation that will accommodate you? And also, you have to look at what the average income of that area is. So your resources are really don't matter as much, because then you have to look at the resources of the neighborhood as a whole. So you can see how general this is and how we're going to run into problems. And so these are not my words. Okay, this is the words of the USDA. These are the words of the people that advocate for food insecurity. So this is what they're stating. Now I'm going to give you the truth. The truth. The truth is, food insecurity is a political, hypothetical phrase. It is not an empirical one. And that is made obvious by the sheer definition of what a low food secure area is, or what food insecurity stands for, right? I think we define that very well. The idea that, and the concept that food insecurity is based upon your opinion and self-reporting doesn't lend credence to the actual reality, because the USDA has no real organization track, nor does any other nonprofit have any organizational track on food insecurity by any metric that is observable or any empirical measure. So let me give you an example. Let's talk about very low food secure people in accordance with the definition. A very low food secure person could be somebody that is extremely obese, that with the COVID shutdowns doesn't have access to the Sizzler anymore, right? So this person usually goes to a buffet or goes to a place where they can consume copious amounts of food. Well, since we have a COVID-19 shutdown and things are on lockdown, they can't go to a buffet. So what do? They sit their happy ass at home and they order takeout or they order Uber Eats. Well, guess what? If they self-report that they're consuming less calories, they are now a very low food secure person by definition. And there's nowhere in the literature that addresses situations like that, which we know happen all the time. And how do we know that this happen all the time? Because we have an obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes problem in this country. So yes, we know that happens. And so what does it mean to have a reduced food intake? Does that mean that, and what they want you to think and what they would like you to think, and what especially preparedness media is pushing, is they're pushing this narrative that 1 in 9 Americans are starving, which is not the case. It's not true. So what they would like you to think, right, is that there are people that are going starving and there's a reduction in food intake. Well, I'll tell you first thing, for most people, that's probably a good thing. And number two, we have no definition of what that threshold is, right? Are we talking about instead of instead of eating 5,000 to 6,000 calories, for a sitting, I'm now only eating 3,500 calories for this meal, right? It doesn't have any metric and it has no variables and it has no measurement of what it means to have reduced food intake. If you go on a diet this year, you're a very low food secure person because you are reporting that you have a change in diet. You have a change in variety of food that you're eating, which is resulting in a reduced food intake. So guess what? If you are on a diet, you are a very low food secure person. On this homestead, I'm a very low food secure person. Why? My nearest city road is over 3 miles away. That's just the city road. That's not the actual grocery store, which is even further. Yeah, I have over a year's worth of food on the hoof here that could feed multiple families for a year. But guess what? You're a food insecure person, right? Because the variety that you have on your homestead isn't enough. It's not enough, right? You can argue that because it's a self-opinion. It's opinionated. Sure, I have cattle. I have rabbit. I have sheep. I have duck. I have chicken. I have turkey. I have quail. That's not enough variety for me though, right? Because it's self-reported. It's an opinion, right? Or is it culturally appropriate food, based upon my culture and ethnicity? Well, if it's not, then you're a food secure person. So that's the truth. There's no empirical measurement for this, right? And let's go down this a little further. Food insecurity doesn't even define what food is, right? And this is going to be something that I'm going to show you a chart here in just a second. But when we're looking at food insecurity, right, it doesn't define what food is, because there is a movement out there, and I know other channels have been talking about it, Ice Age Farmer in particular, which I agree with. I don't agree with most of what he says, but there are things that he does get right. But with that being said, yes, there's no doubt there is a movement, there is a plant-based movement, there is a vegan movement, and based upon what we're seeing, they are self-reporting that most vegans live in food deserts. They live in food deserts because they live in places that don't have a grocery store within a mile, and the grocery stores that are within their sphere of influence don't have the amount of plant-based products that they feel they need to be successful or to have a healthy diet, right? So you have people that are saying animal products are not foods, so therefore I'm food insecure. And this is going to be dangerous for this reason. When people's opinions and self-reporting metrics are more important than the facts and science, we have an issue, because now you're creating public policy, not on the behest of science, logic, and reasoning. You're creating public policy on the behest of somebody's feelings and opinions. Let's take a look at the graph. So you'll notice both those graphs are from the USDA, okay? The first graph that I showed you was taken from numerous vegan outlets are using this graph to show food insecurity based upon the USDA's measurement of not having a grocery store within a mile, right? So the fact that, hey, most places that we're at don't have a grocery store within a mile, and if it is within a mile, there's not adequate public transportation that can get me to and from. Therefore, food insecure. And then it further goes on to talk about, and these stores that are close, these stores that sell food, whether it's a grocery store or it is a restaurant or something like that, these dining places and these grocery stores don't have the vegan foods that I need to be successful in my vegan diet. Therefore, we have very low food security. Because when you don't define what food is, it leads credence to animal products aren't food, or anything that I deem not a food is not a food. So you can have two people that live in the exact same place. One person can be very food secure, and the other person can be very low food secure, and they can live in the same household. They can live in the same house with the same access to vehicles and everything. But since one person, that family, is a vegan and doesn't consider animal products to be food, therefore that person is a very low food secure person, which means the household is a very low food secure household. You could literally have 20 people in the same household, but if you have one person that is food insecure, the household's food insecure. This is not my opinion, obviously. This is not something that I believe in, but this is the facts as reported by the United States Department of Agriculture, right? My opinion on the matter is irrelevant. Obviously, this is not how I feel about food, but the reality is this is how the USDA feels about food. So this is not a conspiracy. This is a fact. The fact is we have nonprofit organizations, because most hunger relief nonprofits use the measurements that the USDA conducts annually, the 10-question survey. And these, like I said, answers are based on self-reported experiences. And then they use that as a basis for their own, I'm going to call it propaganda, but for their own self-interest. And that is public policy. And I don't think it can be seen any more clear than what we've been seeing with current legislators, right? As we've seen with, Meatless Mondays in New York City, or what we've seen with this idea that that animal products are somehow bad, they're somehow evil, they're somehow dangerous, or just by the generality of now we are going to start classifying people that are plant-based as food insecure because the grocery stores don't have the kinds of foods that they want, right? Not based upon reality or any metric that's measurable, but based upon people's feelings. So when you start to create public policy, that's going to be the issue. And why is it so easy to create public policy? Because everybody's looking at this everybody's looking at food insecurity as, oh my gosh, 1 in 9 Americans are starving. No, they're not. 1 in 9 Americans are not starving. By the USDA's generality and general terms, 1 in 9 Americans are self-reporting that they're food insecure. And of those, 4.5% of Americans believe that they are very food insecure, meaning that they're having a reduction of calories. And we don't know if those calories are meeting or not meeting the RDA. And I guarantee you, most of those people that are having a reduction of food intake, they're still meeting the RDA of calories at a minimum. And this is why I feel this way. When we're talking about food insecurity, it's important to remember that the aforementioned peoples that are most disproportionately affected are people of color, right? People of color, low-income families. And this narrative is contraindicated, my personal opinion. I think the evidence flies in the face of that idea, because if you look at, because we have stats on obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. And according to the stats, people of color are disproportionately affected more by obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. And I hate to break it to you, but cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and obesity are not illnesses and diseases that you get because you've had a reduction of calories. You don't get it because you're starving. Okay, that's plain. And I'm not trying to be mean here, but at some point there's somebody out there that has to speak on the facts. And if that person has to be me because there's no one else that can do it, cool, that'll be me. But a history of bad decision making is what leads you to cardiovascular disease, what leads you to diabetes, and what leads you to obesity, is not having a lack of calories, right? And so that narrative is completely debunked with the disproportionate fact that people of color are affected more by those elements. So for anybody looking at the data, I think this one thing is obvious, right? The institutional abstraction of food insecurity is nothing more than a political segue to push a pre-established narrative by making you feel some kind of way, right? The purpose of this movement is to elicit a response in order to change public policy. And we've seen that with, how lunches have changed in the public school systems. And if you think that the government's doing a great job on diet, I encourage you to eat that public school lunch, because I can tell you, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole. And so this is what's really upsetting to me, right? Is you have a preparedness community that is pushing this narrative. And I get it, that it's clickbaity, it's raw, it's the pushing this narrative that people are starving, and it's able to get views, likes, and basically monetization to their channels. Check out my Patreon, and hey, guess what? There's a solution: hoard and stockpiling. But this is a losing strategy. And to the preparedness community influencers out there that are pushing this narrative, I'm telling you how I feel. It's horrible. It's disgusting. It's beyond ridiculous, because it's obvious that if you either not looked at the data, you don't know what food insecurity is, or it's obvious you don't know it because you're ignorant, you're willfully ignorant, or because you do understand what it is and you are trying to push the message because you're just trying to get monetary gain, because it's not going to help the preparedness community at all. Because by advocating for it, you're giving credence that all the aforementioned definitions by the USDA are correct. That's what you're saying. You're saying that is correct. Yeah, all these people are starving. Absolutely. You are pushing the narrative that, animal products aren't really food. Food is anything you want it to be. So, if you live in a place that doesn't have all the, processed soy boy food toys that you want, then, hey, I guess you are food insecure. I mean, that's literally what you're saying. You're advocating that, animal products aren't food if you don't want it to be food. And we should create public policy to be more accommodating to you if you are vegan, I guess. right? So you have no problem advocating that my tax dollars be used to help the vegan movement, because they don't want to grow their own food, and because animal products are somehow horrible and evil. And so what you're going to do is you're going to see public policy change. And public policy is going to change not in your favor. Because by telling people to, and by advocating for people to, for example, stockpile and hoard rice, beans, and camping equipment, right? That's not doing anything for the reality of what the USDA is claiming food security is. Because I'm sorry, rice and beans is not a nutrient, rich diet. All the foods that sugar, flour, rice, beans, all the things that preppers are advocating that people stockpile, if you were to combine them and you were to look at them from a micro, macro, and biological value level, they're not going to show you that you have a complete diet. And even if you did have one that was a complete diet, you would still be food insecure by the other metrics that I've already established when it comes to distance and maybe medium household income in the neighborhood. This is a fact, preppers. This is a fact. This is not my opinion. This is the fact of the matter. And so, for those of you out there that are pushing this narrative, it's disgusting. And you should be ashamed. Personally, you should be ashamed of yourself. It's disgusting. Because when it comes down to it, there are people that are starving in this country. There are people that are hurting. There are people that are calorie deficient and deficient in nutrient density on the biological value level, the macro and micro level. And we should be helping those people. And we should be doing everything in our power to help those people, because I know those people exist. I interact with those people pretty much daily. So I know those people exist out there. And we should be doing everything we can to help them. Not pushing this stupid bullshit narrative of food insecurity so that you can get monetization on your channel, so you can get money from views from YouTube. And then, we're not even we won't go to there, thank God. To push this narrative for financial gain and to totally disregard the truth of the matter of the public policy, which is going to nip you in the bud. It already is. We're already seeing that happen. We're already seeing public policy make it harder for gardeners, for homesteaders, for people that want to grow and raise their own food, healthy food, food that is not controlled by big plant and animal agriculture. We're already seeing those reins being tightened. And they're being tightened because of the idea of food insecurity. It's something that only the government can address, like we saw in the very first video, the first clip of this video, right? That's what we're seeing. We're seeing this narrative of, if you grow your own food, that's laughable. It's laughable because that is so beneath me. Going to a food bank is much better than growing my own food, because growing your own food just shows how beneath society it is. And that's what they're trying to do. The Congress can fix this. The government's job is to fix this. But those people that would grow your own food, those cretins that would dare grow their own food and raise their own animals, that they're the low of the low. And that is what this shift, and that is what this movement is going to do. And so let's talk about the solutions. So the goal that we should have, the goal that I have, we should be producing high quality and locally available food that focuses on being able to accommodate everybody regardless of income bracket. I think that is a very reasonable goal, okay? And so I think that we should focus on objective, observable, and empirical data we can measure. And I think that and we should create implements and we should create controls based upon objective, observable, and empirical data, right? So we make these controls, we put these controls in place that are based upon facts, and then we subject those controls to scientific deduction, common sense, and methodical accountability. So we have to subject our controls to science, to common sense, to efficiency, to methodical analysis, and that's how we hold ourselves accountable, because we need accountability for the implements that we put in. There's no accountability. We're seeing in our food system, there's no accountability. There's been no accountability for GMOs. There's been no accountability for topsoil soil erosion because of mono-agriculture. There's been no accountability for the horrible deaths that have occurred because of herbicides, pesticides, fungicides, and petrochemicals. I mean, and I can go into it, and I can just rattle off a long list because I've done it in other videos, but I think you get the point. There is no accountability, just like for this, you know, for what we're seeing from drug companies that are producing vaccines and other things. We're seeing that there's, you know, no accountability. You can't sue them. They're not accountable. And we can argue whether that's a right or wrong thing. I'm not here to make that argument. I'm just here to state that if we have a problem with people starving, because that's the narrative, that's what we should be doing to fixing it. And we should be holding ourselves accountable. I don't think accountability is a bad thing. So that should be our goal. But unfortunately, we don't look at it that way because, like I said, raising and growing your own food, local food production is considered beneath people. People would much rather wait in a line for hours to get a handout from a nonprofit or from the government than grow their own food because it is looked down upon to do that. I mean, honestly, I'm looked down upon more for being a homesteader than I would be for taking assistance from somebody. And I don't think we should look down on anybody, but I certainly don't think we should be looking down on people that garden and people that homestead. But that's what we're seeing, okay? And so when it comes down to it, public policy is being dictated by self-reporting surveys. That's literally what we're making public policy on, people's opinions and surveys. And that public policy is free to run free because you have nonprofits that are literally saying, well, I'm sorry, this grocery store doesn't have enough processed plant foods for me. Therefore, I'm food insecure. Therefore, we need to do something on a public policy level, aka government intervention, aka laws in order to fix this. That is dangerous and that is scary. And like I said before, it's disgusting that people in the preparedness community are taking this narrative, not actually understanding what it is, and if they do understand it, continue to push it. Because I hate to break it to you, this public policy is coming down isn't going to be one that's going to favor the preparedness community. It's not going to favor those that are prepared. So that's what I have for you guys. I have all my citations in the description box for you guys to take a look at. I highly encourage you guys, those of you that are not going to like the video, I know there's going to be a lot of you guys, while you're leaving me a thumbs down, I encourage you, if you don't like the video, to leave a thumbs down. Please leave a thumbs down. And while you're leaving a thumbs down, please articulate why I'm wrong or what I got wrong. Like I said, I'm not saying that there aren't people that are hurting and suffering. I absolutely do. But it's not 1 in 9 Americans, okay? It's not. Also, how you go about it is not through the public policy that we have seen instituted. It's not. The public policy we see instituted is not working. So, like I said, this is going to come down with more detriment than it is help. And for those of you that are in the preparedness community, that are influencers, that are pushing this narrative, I'm not going to tell you to stop. I just wish that at some point in your life, you decide to tell the truth. Just being honest with you. Like I said, and like I've told other people that have already approached me about, you know, my candidness, you know, I appreciate your guys' concern. I don't care. I care about the truth. I care about science. I don't care about any of the other stuff, right? If people want to change, they're going to change. It is not my job to change people. I have an obligation, in this video at least, to put the information out there for people to see, read, and hopefully understand. But outside of that, I don't care. It's your job to feed your family, not mine. It's your job to protect your family, not mine. It's your job to clothe your family, not mine. It's your job to take responsibility for your family, not mine. So I appreciate those that think that my message is too hurtful or too harsh, but reality is not family friendly. That's the truth. So I'll leave you guys with that. Please, if I got something wrong or if I'm inaccurate in my approach, let me know. Let's discuss this. I want to leave you guys with one last quotation. Bill Mollison, food activist, environmentalist, just man living out, you know, just Incredible. I mean, I'll leave it at that. He said this: the greatest change we need to make is from consumption to production, even if on a small scale in our own gardens. If only 10% of us did this, there would be enough for everyone. Hence the futility of revolutionaries who have no garden, who depend on the very system they attack, and who produce words and bullets, not food and shelter. If that doesn't describe where we're at today as a country, I don't know what does. I've always been fascinated with that quote because it's true. You have these so-called preppers, you have these so-called patriots, you have these so-called revolutionaries, and you have people on the left that are revolutionaries for their, for their public policy, and then you have people on the right that are patriots for their public policy. You have revolutionaries on every front, but it's so funny that they will attack the very system they depend on. Food insecurity is no different. So, like I said, I hope you guys like the video. I encourage you guys to be sustainable, if not for yourself, for those you care about and love. And like I said, I feel obligated to make this video. That's why I did. Citations are in the description box below. And for any of those, and I've been putting this out there. No one's taken me up on it yet, and I understand why. But if anybody wants to debate this or have further discussions on this, let me know. We'll talk about it. Well, there you guys have it. As always, guys, honestly, long live the Republic.